To be clear, right, women are not a niche population. Women make up 50% of the people who consume media, right, but only make up, say, 5 or 10% of the people who make that media. It seems incredibly imbalanced, right? And it's yet another route that women aren't getting the voice that women should be able to get. It's often done with the idea that men will be the audience as well, right? Which is why you end up with like, oh yeah, we have female characters in our games, but like, yes, but they're not like actually the characters that women who are playing the games might want to be, right? They're the characters that men who are playing the games, you think those men want to see. Yeah. Right? Which is a huge difference.
I've been looking at the gender gap in free and open source culture content communities. So for instance, at Wikipedia, why is it that only 9% of the women, only 9% of the contributors are women? And that's even more pronounced in other technical areas. So as I was doing this work about the gender gap in geek communities, something that's happened in the past 10 years has been the development of something called geek feminism, both from a practical point of view and from a theoretical academic point of view. And right now, the term geek feminism is most strongly associated with a blog and a wiki. And there, some geek women have documented their own experiences in trying to sort of understand their own identity as a geek, but also as women and feminists. And so, for instance, on the blog and on the wiki, you see all these topics about women's participation in technical conferences or geeky anime conferences and things like that. And basically the idea is, you know, how can you be a geek while also being a feminist? Because it's similar to that typical sort of double bind where if you're a woman and you're a geek, you're never geek enough. Right. But if you're a geeky woman, then your sort of femininity is challenged in other contexts. So it's kind of perplexing, but I think the articulation of a geek feminist identity is important. There's a set of experiments that I'm really fond of where they would ask female undergraduates about their interest in information technology and computing, would they ever consider majoring, and it was a priming experiment, so that means they put these little sort of subconscious cues in a room and see how people's behavior and responses change. And the presence of like Star Trek posters and like Mountain Dew and kind of geeky junk food depressed women's stated interest in participating in computing discipline. So there can be very subtle sort of things that let women know that this is not a place where they would normally or typically be. Even if people say explicitly you're welcome, there might be other ways in which people are communicating you're not welcome, or at the very least you're unusual and atypical.
I would concur with the notion that you know, online games and virtual worlds do have a lot of sexist imagery. And in my own research, what I found is that because of both sexist imagery and also sort of sexist language and misogynistic language that the other players are using, the women tend to cluster together. So I see a lot of instances both in sort of objective records of the data and also in interviews with women who play the games, where they'll surround themselves by other women. You get the classic sort of like woman as decorative object, you know, avatars are kind of voluptuous. Like even in Second Life, I tried very hard, because as a researcher in Second Life, to put on sort of a professional outfit, and it was not easy to kind of cover all the parts of the avatar. So for sure, the art, you know, the artwork inside the games is sexist. I do think that some of the MMO type games are doing better in terms of having female characters that have like good skills and good, you know, like a lot of the like console games, like the female characters aren't as powerful and things like that. So I do think online games are doing better in that way. But sure, I mean, they all sort of buy into the classic, like stereotypically sexist storylines about the woman needing to be saved. If you look at just massively multiplayer virtual world kinds of games, then yes, there is a gender imbalance, and it ranges from anywhere from you know, only 10% women, you know, up to maybe 30 or 40% women, depending on the game. But typically speaking, there are more men than women. I don't also want to discount like the active sexism and misogyny, right? Like I don't think that it's only because women aren't speaking up. I do think that those environments, you know, whether it's because of a few people that started out, or because of this kind of like momentum building around a community norm. I do think that in many cases they are actively hostile to women. So I don't think that it would necessarily matter if there were 50% of the people there were women. So it is this place where it has become normative to be rude to women, and maybe it's worse because no one ever calls them on it, but I think there are plenty of examples of people calling the men on it, and that only makes it
I think
worse.
one of the hardest things is it's so easy to like say you really care about this issue, and like I want to get more women playing games, I want to get more women making games, like this is a dominant cultural force right now, right? Like the games industry makes more money than movies. And it's very easy to like say that you want all of those things, but then there's very common like patriarchy driven arguments against it, like, and you can get dismissed very quickly when you speak out. And so having the ability to like fight back against the dismissive comments, I think, is what you need.